Welcome back to the Get a Student Life podcast, where we talk about all things student life and love telling stories from students at Boise State. I'm your host, Molly Ballison, and today I'm here with Morgan Riley, a grad student studying biomedical engineering. So thank you for taking time out of your busy grad student schedule to be on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm excited to learn more about what you're studying. But before we get into your story, I have a question of the day for you. If you could pick any age to be for the rest of your life, what would that age be and why?
That is a very good question. So I think I'm going to go with 23.
Okay, very specific.
Because when I was a kid, everyone aims towards, when I'm 18, when I'm 21, like I'll have the freedom, I'll be an adult, this, that, and the other. And that was fine. But when I was 23, I don't know, I feel like I, settled into being an adult more, but at the same time, I was still young enough that I didn't have any of those aches and pains that onset after 22.
Exactly.
I don't know if you've experienced any of those yet.
The aches and pains?
Yeah.
Only a little bit.
Yeah, they get worse. I mean, I'm only 28. So anyone who's older, in their 30s and 40s, if they're listening to this, will be like, oh no,
they don't know anything yet.
Yeah, but I feel like just every year they get worse. I'm like, oh my goodness. But 23 was a good age.
I like that, and I'm looking forward to that, because I feel like there's a lot of pressure around 18 or 21, or when you feel like you have to have arrived at that age, but then it's kind of a letdown. We're like, oh, okay, I still don't have things figured out, or I don't feel like the age that I am. I don't know.
And now you're out on your own. You have to pay taxes. You have to worry about health insurance and, all those sort of glorious life experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. We love the 20s. All right, so I'm excited to hear more about how you got into biomedical engineering. I can't say as I've met many people that are studying that, and it just seems really cool. So is that something you were always interested in, or did that come about through school, and just how did you get into that?
Yeah, so when I was very young, I always enjoyed math and science. Those were my favorite subjects. But I didn't really necessarily have a career plan until I was in high school. So in high school, I determined that I wanted to be a pilot. Particularly, I wanted to get my pilot's license and my aviation mechanics license so that I could fly my own plane as well as fix it.
Yeah.
And this was ideal for me because I planned on being a mission pilot. Not just in the bush, in the jungle. We had some friends who ran some different mission programs down in very rural areas of South America. And so this was my plan. This is what I was aiming for. And in short, that did not happen. Because I was told by all of the organizations that while we would love to have you and we think you do a good job, we can't hire you because you're female. Not because they didn't think that I was capable, but because of the societies in which I would be working. They wouldn't respect the fact that I was capable and I would be a greater risk of getting hurt and possibly killed.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that's fair, but disappointing.
Yeah, totally.
So when I graduated from high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do, what I should do with, should I go to college? Should I just get a job? I didn't know. So I ended up just going home and getting a job, just trying to figure out what to do with my life. And I didn't want to go to college right off the bat with all my friends because if I didn't know what I wanted, I didn't want to waste money.
Exactly.
And that's ultimately what it would have been. It would have been a waste of money, particularly now knowing where I ended up. So some friends actually came to visit, and they were friends of my parents, and they're one of the leaders in a mission organization that is international, helps people in all different areas of the world. And after they'd done some presentations in our local community, They're like, oh, Morgan, what are you doing? Hadn't seen them in a while. Like, oh, I'm just here working, not doing much. They're like, oh, well, have you ever thought of doing a student mission year? I was like, oh, yeah, I've always thought about it, but, it was always something I was going to do in the future, not something necessarily I was like, it's this year. I'm doing it now. I was like, well, I do have time. Not like I'm doing anything. So they're like, well, hey, we have some available postings, depending on what your interests are. I could go teach. I could be, work with different medical programs. I could, there was lots of different availabilities in different countries.
Okay. So you could choose what kind of mission work you wanted to go do.
Yeah. So it's mission work, but at the same time it's volunteer work.
Okay.
Depending on what exactly and where you were going. But it was all underneath the umbrella of missions.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What organization was that through?
It's called Adventist Frontier Missions.
Okay, cool.
Head office is based in Michigan. Yeah.
Awesome.
But there's a lot of mission organizations. I wouldn't say that I would recommend all of them. Based off of some people I've talked to, they've had horrible experiences. But thankfully, I had a very good experience.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
So where'd you end up going?
I went to Ireland.
Oh,
they had
cool.
A program where they would interact with the local community and help them with healthful living. We had exercises at the local parish, exercise classes. Just exercises.
Yes.
Anyway, exercise classes
Fun.
at the local parish. And mostly just, making friends, integrating into the community. But one of the biggest things was depression for the local community. So we had depression recovery classes for people who suffered, and a lot of people suffer from depression over there. I think mostly due to sunlight deprivation.
That makes sense. That's so interesting, though.
And everyone, literally everyone, either had a close family member or friend commit suicide.
Oh, wow. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah. So it was a big deal for them.
Yeah.
Anyway, while I was there, circling all the way back to the course of my life and how I ended up here.
Yeah.
So while I was in Ireland, I met this girl, and she was part of our friend group. And she had said that she was studying at the local college biomedical engineering. What is that? And she described how it was basically a combination of engineering and biology for the purpose of, helping people on a medical basis, but with man-made materials. So I was like, oh, that actually sounds really cool. So I started looking for schools and where I could possibly obtain said degree. And at the same time, I grew up in North Carolina, and my parents had wanted to leave the East Coast for a long time. So I found a school out in Washington called Walla Walla University, and they had a program for biomedical engineering for undergrad. So my parents were like, well, we're just going to move there, and then you can live at home, have free rent, basically.
Yeah.
Worked out really well. So my whole family moved out there, and I started my degree then in biomedical engineering.
Wow. And so do you think that you would have gone into that if you didn't go to Ireland and didn't meet someone and talk to them about it?
Very possibly. If I hadn't found out about it then, at the perfect time for me to then enroll and start the program, I don't know where I would have ended up. A lot of people were telling me, oh, you should be a nurse. I don't want to be a nurse. I'd much rather be, this is going to sound terrible, I'd much rather be dissecting the people than helping the people.
Oh, I see. The getting in there and studying aspect of things.
Yeah, not that I would, cut people up, not in a psychopathic way, but, I'm not a care person. I'm a
Gotcha.
fix-it person.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what are you most passionate about in that field of biomedical engineering?
What area I want to go into?
Yeah, and what exactly are you studying? What are you passionate about studying?
So my long-term goal is to work in medical devices, particularly the ones that are implanted inside your body, because a lot of people would think biomedical engineering works with prosthetics, which you can. That is an area you can go into. However, when you take a medical device or a man-made material and you put it inside the body, it's a whole different ballgame, because not only does it have to adapt to your tissues and be compatible so that you're not going to experience pain, it also has to be non-inflammatory, non-reactive, like all these different things. It has to check these boxes. And so I find that pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah. And medical devices are just getting smaller and smaller and less invasive to the body.
So can you embed these medical devices like into, is the goal to embed them into like cells, and then they, how does that work?
So I don't think anyone has achieved a medical device that is the size of a cell.
Oh, that's true. Cells are very small.
They're very
I'm
small.
also not in science. So.
Yeah. So the smallest devices could be like the size of a grain of rice.
That's so tiny still.
Yeah, yeah. And that's assuming that they're fairly simple devices, and they've made them in such a way that the larger power components are on the outside of the body, and then you would just communicate to the device.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so the goal would be to give someone that medical device, and then it's communicating with technology, and so then doctors could see what's happening like on the inside.
Yeah. So a pacemaker is a great example.
Okay.
Pacemakers are about maybe 2 inches wide by maybe an inch or so tall, and they're fairly thin. I'd say they're probably like half a centimeter thick or smaller, maybe a fourth of a centimeter. Anyway, they've gotten a lot smaller than they were originally. Now, the way pacemakers work is they're implanted into a little pocket that they make in your chest cavity. Actually, well, I don't know if this is the rule or if it's just some surgeons do this, but they take a flap of tissue that they make from pork.
Interesting.
I'm assuming they decellularize it or something, which now that I've said decellularize, I realize you guys might not know what that means. So,
yes, explain.
Decellularizing is when you take tissues and you dissolve the cells out of the tissue. And what's left is what's called the cellular matrix. And it's the scaffold that the cells cling to that make your tissues. So if you decellularize some tissues, it leaves that extracellular matrix, and then your body cells can then integrate into it.
Oh, and like make it their own. That's so interesting.
Yeah. So a lot of people 3D print or mimic these with different like dissolvable polymers and other things, but the body is a lot more receptive to tissues that are made by the body, or at least some other biological organism. So pigs, if you didn't know this, have the closest tissues to humans. Yeah.
And so they're
doesn't know what that says about humans.
I don't know. So they're used a lot in the medical field because it's similar.
Yeah.
Oh.
So they take a part of their tissues and they make a little pocket inside your chest cavity. And then they put the pacemaker into that pocket. And then the wire leads then go into the sections of the heart that you need that electrical impulse, depending on what type of heart issue you have. Sorry, bumped the table. So the pacemaker, once it's implanted, they will program it from outside the body. Or like they could program it before they put it in, but it's best to program it like once it's been implanted. But say your heart issues change over time. They don't want to open you back up and give you a different pacemaker because that's very invasive. Every time they have surgery, you're at risk of infection. So instead, you just leave the pacemaker in and communicate with it wirelessly. Like, just have a device that they put over your chest, and they program it and change it based off of what you need.
Gotcha. And so then what you're studying, working on developing is just like a much smaller scale of that.
Yeah, so my current research is in developing a micro device that could be implanted on a peripheral nerve peripheral nerves being anything that's outside your spinal cord or brain. So all the neurons throughout your body are peripheral nerves, except for the brain and spinal cord. So this micro device, we would implant it with a nerve cuff or a way of stimulating around the neuron so that we could control selectively which signals are passing through that neuron.
Oh, so interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, now I recall you describing like attaching it to a nerve, and then I was mixing up that and a cell. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so is this in something you're studying with something with a team?
Yes. So me and my lab group are all working towards this common goal, but from multiple viewpoints, because I'm a biomedical engineer, right? I have a lot of classes and knowledge when it comes to biology, tissue interfaces, materials, and how those are going to be reactive or not within the body. However, my lab group, they are all electrical engineers. So they actually know how to make the device. I then implement the device.
Okay.
So I get to be the one who hands-on puts the devices inside of test subjects. Not people, not yet. We'll get there. But we have some little animal subjects that we currently use. Anyway, so my lab group, they're all electrical engineers, and they got to do the research behind the scenes for making these types of things. And we're all under, our lab group is all under Dr. Ben Johnson. He's an electrical engineering professor here.
All right, and he's your advisor too?
Yes, he's my
Gotcha.
advisor, my boss,
your go-to.
Yes.
That's awesome. So I'm just impressed with anyone that is able to be in STEM, first of all, and being a woman in STEM too, I'm sure comes with its own set of challenges. And so would you describe what challenges and what successes you face being a woman in STEM?
Yeah, for sure. Overall, I feel like being a woman in STEM hasn't really been that difficult. Everyone has been very open and accepting, and I've never had anyone tell me, "Oh, you can't be an engineer because you're a woman." So,
well, that's good.
Yeah, because people have definitely told me horror stories of, "Oh no, this, that, and the other happened," but I haven't really experienced any of those things. So, I feel like that has been good. Engineering for women has come a long ways in the last 40 years or so. So I definitely feel like that's a small success. I mean,
yeah, totally.
The fact that I haven't experienced bad things. However, at the same time, you do run into people who, just based off their personalities, you just might not get along with them.
Yeah, so one of the challenges is just essentially getting along with people, or
yes, finding people you mesh with.
Especially when you're important, working so closely together and want to be on the same page about everything.
Yes,
sure,
absolutely. Yeah.
How do you balance being a grad student? What are things that have helped you and made you be successful along the way?
Yeah, so being a grad student, it is my job, because you, depending on your program, depending on your school, a lot of graduate programs, they have stipends that you can, it's a living stipend. So not only are you doing research and getting your degree, but you're also getting paid to do it at the same time, which is very helpful. Yes. Something you don't get as an undergrad. So I definitely feel like being a grad student has been not as bad as I was expecting it to be. Overall, I would feel like it's easier than in my undergraduate degree.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I would not have guessed that, to be honest.
But a huge component, I would say, of having success in a graduate program is picking a good advisor. It is highly crucial. Having a good advisor will make or break you during your graduate program in your studies. Because classes, they're just normal, right? You take classes, they come and go, you pass. Or you don't. Maybe you retake it, no judgment. But on your day-to-day, it is your advisor and your relationship with them that really determines your life, your happiness, and ultimately your success. So I would say picking a good advisor and making sure that you get along with them well is highly crucial. And a lot of people then asking like, oh, well, what makes a good advisor?
Yeah.
Because that looks different for everyone. Everyone has different personalities, and then their needs are going to be different as far as what they need to succeed. So for me, that was someone who is open to communication, someone who you can talk to, someone who's going to provide support. And I've definitely had advisors in the past. Ooh, I kind of messed up on the word advisors. I've had advisors in the past who were not that supportive person who I needed. And it can be very hard. If you don't get along with your advisor, it is extremely stressful. So coming here to BSU, I was very happy to find a good advisor who I got along with really well. And it makes a world of difference, I will say. But picking a good advisor is so crucial. And as far as how to pick that good advisor, people really just need to, I would say, talk to the people who are already in that advisor's lab group. But they'll tell you almost all good things. You'll hardly ever find someone who will tell you a bad thing. But at that point, I would say, you need to make sure to do your due diligence. And if you talk to other people in nearby labs who know that advisor and lab group,
but
they're the
ones
ones.
Under them.
Yeah. They're once or twice removed, but they've heard the stories, and those stories are either good or they're bad.
So they can give you a more honest opinion.
Yes, you will get the honest opinions then.
Gotcha. And that's interesting that it's different with grad school, where you're picking your advisor, whereas undergrad, you're just paired with an advisor.
Yeah.
So what kinds of things were you looking for and that you would suggest other people look for in advisors when you have the opportunity to pick them?
Yeah, I would say first look for someone who has research interests, like the areas of research you will enjoy, because that's going to be the fundamentals of what you do every day. So if it's not enjoyable and it's not going to further your future and your degree, there's no point in picking that person. However, you can find the perfect research group, but the advisor is terrible. So you have to have that conversation with yourself of, okay, what am I willing to do? How long am I willing to go to find that research group and advisor who you can truly succeed with?
And someone that's going to be communicative and support you in whatever way you need.
Yeah, absolutely.
And understand where you're coming from and know how to make you successful.
Yeah, because ideally you should be friends with your advisor.
Yes.
I mean, depending on your relationship with them, friends to a certain point. They are your boss. But at the same time, they are going to be your reference letter in your future.
Yeah,
They're going to be
exactly.
the person who really determines so much of your future and your success.
Yeah, so that's an important decision to make when in grad school. So to wrap up our conversation today, what advice would you have to just general students? What is a piece of advice that you'd want to share with them?
So for anyone thinking of going into engineering, no matter what type of engineering, but I will put a plug in for bioengineering. I definitely think it's the coolest. But if you think about doing any sort of engineering degree and you think maybe you want to take it further into graduate school, I would say it will be hard. However, it's hard for all of us. We all struggle every day. But those who make it and those who don't, it's purely based off of how much can you push yourself? What are you willing to do to succeed? Like, if you can just take it one more day and just know we're all there with you. We're all struggling, but it's worth it in the end. And you can do it.
Yeah, that makes me think of the word perseverance, just pushing through.
Just persevere.
Yeah. And so it's encouraging to hear how you've persevered to get this far in your career and continue making a difference in the world of science, and encouraging, I'm sure, for other students to hear that you didn't know what you wanted to do out of high school, or your plan got kind of thrown out the window, and like, okay, what happens now? And
pivot.
who knows, you might have a conversation with somebody who points you in the right direction. So thank you for sharing your stories and your journey on the podcast today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm fine if people ever email me.
Wonderful.
I'll answer their questions.
Wonderful.
Whatever.
Don't forget to like this video and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes with all the exciting guests we have coming up. We love hearing your stories and perspectives, so if you have one to share or you know of someone who you think would make a great guest on the podcast, reach out to us via the Student Life website, email studentlife@boisestate.edu, or DM us on Instagram. Also, make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Boise State Student Life. Thanks for listening. Now go get a student life.